Good afternoon, I'm Jason, and I'm doing my discussion on Molly Pitcher. Some of the questions is going to be based off Milio's analysis, how Betsy Ross became famous. I reflected those questions to be based off Molly Pitcher. One of the first questions that comes up is on how a historical female figure became famous. In Caitlin L. Alexander's book Molly Pitcher, in the Battle of Monmouth, she describes that on June 28, 1778, during the battle located in Monmouth, which was located by Delaware, Molly Pitcher was getting pitchers of water for the soldiers due to the heat during that day. While obtaining water, she saw her husband get wounded, and he could not continue the fight. Because he was unable to continue the fight, she told her wounded husband that she would continue to serve in his place. And so in this instance, she would dip the rammer into the bucket of water and push it through the cannon, as well as adding gunpowder to the cannon, with another soldier adding the cannonball, so it can continue to be fired. This effect allowed her to clean the cannon. It also cooled the cannon, and so they were able to continually use the cannon during that period of time. Additionally, the story said that a British cannonball had been shot and passed between her legs, where the men around her stood in shock for her bravery. The next part of the story has her meeting with General George Washington at the time, who was so impressed by her action that he gave her a commission where she was then called Captain Molly. This story, which some of us probably have learned from school, part of the reason that the story became famous is because the fact that she was a woman and during the battle assisting soldiers in their ability to engage the enemy. Which this is also goes into our second question on what makes Molly Pitcher different, and I think that is a big part of why it is still within our psyche, is that Molly Pitcher, during the Revolutionary period of time, a lot of the historians gravitated towards the men during that period of time. You hear more stories about Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and so forth than you do of women like, as the author mentioned, Betsy Ross. And this is even true when we look at other parts of history. If you look at the American frontier, we hear more stories about guys like Wild Bill Hitchcock and Doc Holliday, and very few women. We get like Anna Oakley as an example of a woman during that period of time, for example. In that vein, that's what makes Molly Pitcher different compared to the stories of other war heroes, especially during the Revolutionary War. This is also mentioned in the article Molly Pitcher Rediscovered, where the author notes that many of the stories and the rumors surrounding her story emphasize that she was a woman who essentially took the place of her husband to continue the fight. This then leads us to the next question: is why did her story become so widely accepted? As I think as historians, we need to understand that a lot of time history has a lot of myth making on many historical figures, and a lot of times this can be hard to separate the truth versus what is not true. What is the myth and what is not myth? Molly Pitcher is not different in this way. There's in Carol Claver's article, An Introduction to the Legend of Molly Pitcher, she goes through different views on whether on different historians on whether they thought she was a real person, who they thought she was, and whether she was actually maybe a conglomerate of multiple individuals added into the story of, or the legend of Molly Pitcher. But there is some general thing that historians seem to agree with. That is that in some fashion there were women or a woman who in fact was giving water to the soldiers and did some sort of act that was beyond the call of duty. And in terms of, and we know there are different views because even in Molly Pitcher's Rediscovered, her view was that due to some tax record and a military person given to a Mary Hayes Macaulay, she argued that, hey, this must be the historical Molly Pitcher. And then you get into Claver's article, which talks about Carol Claver's article. Again, she goes through multiple. I can't go through all the author, but she goes through multiple. With some saying there are similar story with multiple individual. Some was using the name Molly, and including a Captain Molly, and all these individuals could be a representative of who Molly Pitcher is. And that article actually helps to show that, hey, yes, there was multiple, at least in a historical study, there's multiple women that were, Molly Pitcher would not have been the only woman out on the battlefield. And in fact, it seems to be a very common occurrence during the Revolutionary War period. Now, the last four questions are a question that Milio herself says she asked her students in class. And the first of this is whether a woman of another profession would have filled the shoes of a female revolutionary representative. And I think the answer to that is yes. I think there already are examples of other positions. You have, I mean, even in Milio's article itself, Betsy Ross, who the story is she created the first American flag, which there's also a lot of myth making with that as well. But in essence, she was an upholsterer, so there's always, and then you have records of, we know that there's some female who maybe had worked as nurses, so I think there's always going to be some story during that, especially during the period of the Revolutionary War, where we're going to get some of that symbolism of the American spirit. So how important is it to have a famous female from the American Revolution, and does Molly Pitcher still hold importance in her iconography? And I think yes. I mean, one famous picture of her shows her taking the rammer and putting it into the cannon, and there's many pictures of her doing that. But I think in today's, especially with today, with people seeking out strong role models, especially with women, she's a good example of that iconography of a strong woman, right? So I think that still holds up even to that symbolism. It still holds up today, and is a good representation of the symbol of America, essentially, right? Then we come up with Milio's last question was, why haven't writings such as this challenging the validity of the legend affected her public praise? And I think that is because there are many, symbolism, iconographic, myths in general, and especially in America, has been really ingrained in our culture, our people. We love to read stories of these great individuals, and I think that has a great effect on why these legends continue on. But we can take that, and when we can also relate to that. Again, being able to relate to these people is very important in symbolism and iconography, which I think this does very well. So even though it is difficult to separate the myths versus what actually happens, you can't technically completely separate the myths from the truth either. And that symbolism will always be ingrained in the American psyche. Thank you. Bye.